Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, Accuse Me of Stealing. You will lose everything. First post, be kind. This happened way back in the dark ages, 1986. I was 21 at the time and working for a gas station that was associated with a certain grocery store chain in Washington state. It was owned by a company not affiliated with said chain, but had locations at nearly every one. As this was long before the days of debit cards, this was a cash-only gas station. We didn't even take credit cards. Customers would pull up, pump their gas and then come to my window to pay. We also sold cigarettes. No drinks, no snacks, customers couldn't even get into my booth. I had been working there about a year when the company announced it was closing the location. My manager and I were offered positions at another location upstate and we both accepted. We moved our respective families and started our new jobs. As new hires. This station was incredibly busy. We did more business in 8 hours than my old location would do in a week. This location also had a different setup. Here you would pull into the station from a single entrance, pump your gas, and then drive forward to a single exit where the Pay Here booth was located. There were always 2 cashiers on duty. Each cashier had a cash drawer. One thing I should note, there were also no computers. So closing the drawer down between shifts was time-consuming and tedious. We had to manually count the cigarettes remaining, and count the cash drawers. We would fill out an end-of-shift report listing the starting balances and the ending balances. We also had to list the gallons sold from each pump. At the end of the shift, the total of gallons sold and the total cigarettes sold should equal the cash balance. It is important to note here that not once in the year I had worked for the previous location had I been off by more than 10 cents. The following morning after my first shift, I was informed by the manager that I was short $50. Impossible, I said, I balanced out yesterday. He said that I must have stolen that money after I had completed the paperwork. I just looked at him and said, no, I didn't. He gave me a verbal warning and said if it happened again I would be fired and the stolen money would be deducted from my paycheck this week. In the 5 days that followed, I realized quickly the manager was up to something. My old manager, who was just another worker now, was also accused of stealing. As was one other new employee. I can't vouch for the other employee, but I'm pretty sure she did nothing wrong. The employees that had been there a while were never accused of anything. I did some checking and found out this manager was relatively new, had only been there about 6 months, and the other cashiers had been here before him. Only new cashiers were being accused of stealing. And that location had been having stealing problems for about 6 months and the turnover was high with the new employees. I came to work at 6 a.m. on a Monday only to be told I was being fired. For cause. The manager accused me of taking $500 out of my drawer the previous Friday. He said he only discovered it this morning, even though he had worked Sat and Sun. I said okay and left. I was pretty angry and instead of going home, I parked in the grocery store parking lot and proceeded to settle in to watch the gas station. I knew that at 9 a.m. sharp, he would take the cash in the safe and make the weekend deposit. At 9 a.m. he left the gas station and headed to the bank. But instead of walking into the bank, he walked into the Indian casino next door. It's not really a casino like we think of today, but more of a betting parlor for the races. It did have slot machines, but no card tables. I think, well, this is interesting. He comes out of the casino at exactly 10 a.m., walks next door to the bank, does his business and then heads back to the gas station. I head home with a plan. Every morning I follow him from the gas station to the casino. I take a picture of him leaving, and one of him arriving at the bank and walking into the casino. I take pictures of him coming out and then heading to the bank. I do this for 5 days straight. He even went on Saturday. On day 3 my old manager was fired for stealing $150. I get the film developed, no digital camera in the dark ages, note the times and dates on the back of each one. Then I call the main office of the gas company. It's after 5, but I'm hoping someone is there. And there is. I speak to a woman and explain my situation, and she says she knows exactly who I should speak to and transfers me. By some grace of God, she has transferred me to none other than the president, CEO of the company. I tell him my story and tell him I did not steal from his company and could prove who actually did. He took down my information and said he would be in touch. I'm thinking to myself, yeah, right. The next morning I went to the station to perform my usual observation of the manager. At 9 a.m. he leaves for the bank. At 10 a.m. he comes out. At that moment 2 stern-looking gentlemen approach him. One pulls out his wallet and shows him something. The other one is talking. The manager goes pale and takes a step back. Next thing I know, he is being escorted to a car I hadn't noticed, and they drive off. I lose them at a traffic signal, so I head back to the station. They all show back up about 5 minutes later, and a few minutes after that a police cruiser pulls in. The officer talks to the stern gentleman and proceeds to place the manager in handcuffs. The other man says nothing but is glaring daggers at the manager. The president called me later that afternoon and informed me that the manager had been arrested for embezzlement. Turns out that in 6 months he had managed to steal about $5,000. He would take the store cash into the casino and gamble with it. If he won, he would make the normal bank deposit. If he lost, he would make the deposit and note in his records that we had been short the previous day. The CEO had already been focusing on that location because of the stealing and high turnover rate, but my information helped them figure out what exactly had been going on. I was thanked and sent a substantial check as a reward. My old manager was offered the manager's job and I was offered my old job back. I declined as I had already found another job that I liked more and paid better. The gambling manager was sentenced to 1 year in jail and ordered to attend counseling for his gambling addiction. His wife divorced him and took their 3 children to California. His house was foreclosed on and he ended up in a homeless shelter. Don't accuse me of stealing. I will get revenge. The next one is titled, Glasses, you called me names for a month and humiliated me for fun. That's why you deserved what you got. Just saying before I start, a biscuit, bicky, is a cookie. One day, it was the school swimming carnival, and I was standing at the top of the grandstand throwing grapes at my mates and hiding when I hit them and they turned around. We used to do it to each other all the time. I got hit in the face 100 times with all sorts of different things. We thought it was the funniest thing ever. A teacher saw me and demanded that I go and pick up 5 pieces of rubbish. I went and picked up these biscuits in cling film. My Aussie friends will help me here and tell me which biscuit it was. It was one of those bickies with pink icing and sprinkles that you get out of the packet. It had been there for a while, there were a few ants on it. I thought it would be funny to show the teacher the bickies with the ants. Anyway, the subject of the story, let's call him Glasses, he noticed this. I was in year 9, so I was about 15, and he was in year 12, so 17 to 18. I was small for my age, couldn't have been taller than 5'4" and weighed about 50 kilograms. He was about 6'2" and had a head like a slapped butt. Anyway, he proceeds to follow me to the bin and say something to the tune of, "Hey bicky boy, hungry for bickies?" "Nah, I'm just go on, eat the bickies bicky boy, go on," and that kind of went on for 5 minutes. I told him to shut the duck up and he laughed, so that booed me out for the rest of the day. Then he was on the same bus back to school, every 5 minutes, "Hey bicky boy, got any bickies?" "Alright, chalk it down to a bad day, tomorrow's new, no worries." Every day for a month, I'd see him in the halls, a guy I'd never spoken to before, and he chanted bicky boy at me every time, sometimes with friends and sometimes on his own. I ignored it, moved on. My father figure had just died, I was addicted to weed, I was in a real rut, you know. Getting bashed at home and stuff. I really didn't need it. I was close to reaching one of my classes one day, one bad day, when I heard a noise come out of the stairwell. "Hey bicky boy." That was ducking it. He was never going to look my way again. I was one of those kids who was pretty unkempt. I always had my shirt untucked and my tie done haphazardly, and my locker was more a collection of useless paper than an organized shelf. I procured an apple that had seen better days and smelled like it, pulled a Ziploc bag full of bickies out of my own lunch bag, emptied it, put the apple in and stomped on it. Voila, apple puree. I had seen where Glass's locker was, as I was now very aware of his presence in any room, and he made the smart decision to leave it unlocked on a regular basis. I pulled his schoolbag out of his locker, middle of class, no one around. I emptied the rotten apple onto his books, all over his laptop, all over his crap. I really mushed it in there using the plastic of the bag to unsuccessfully protect my hands from the puree. I left one of the biscuits from the Ziploc bag leaning against his schoolbag and closed the locker. I ran to wash my hands. I was really focused on how I was going to pull this off without getting bashed after school or getting in any sort of trouble over it, 'cause Lord knows I didn't need another disciplinary issue on record, but I needed him to know it was me. After I washed my hands, I zipped my puny butt down to the stairs that lead to the office, an office I was very familiar with as a kid, with a few suspensions under his belt. Without giving too much detail about the layout of my unique school grounds, we had what were essentially fire stairs. These stairs lead directly to the reception of the office. I put my back against the wall, right at the door of the exit of the stairs, took a huge deep breath, exhaled, and put on the saddest face I possibly could. They were more used to smart-ass, vindictive and spiteful. They hadn't seen me like this before. Anyway, to cut an already long story short, I confessed to doing this terrible thing, and asked through crocodile tears if I could speak to him face to face, with a teacher present of course. I left out the part where I put the bicky against his bag. I didn't think that would help my case. I stayed there with the school counselor while the vice principal pulled him from class, no doubt humiliating him. He didn't know what it was about yet. He comes into the room, just me and the counselor, and he looks at me absolutely dumbfounded, sort of like a mixture of "God, you're a snitch, and you think this is bad, you should see what I do to the other kids." I give him a really exaggerated apology for looking at him the wrong way at the swimming carnival, and told him that you shouldn't bully people when you don't know what they're going through. The counselor escorts him out of the room. He looks back at me, I give him a huge grin and a wink, his eyes widened in disbelief, and then he went and got scolded the crap out of by the vice principal, who then, with the counselor, told me how brave it was that I had handled it in that way. I had crafted the entire situation to look as though it was that way, and got off scot-free. He got 2 after-school detentions. The next one is titled, "The Girl Friday with the PhD Takes Over the Business from Ungrateful Owner." This is a long tale. It is also a textbook case of why you don't abuse loyal associates. My spouse was the second person hired at a consulting company in a very specialized industry. In her 15 years with the firm, it grew to a respectable 3-office, 8 to 10 employees at each location entity. She and the owner grew the business on the contacts, expertise and presentation of my wife. To the extent that my wife's abilities and education were the main reason new business came through the door. Over the years her scope of responsibility grew so that the owner was basically 75% absent and mostly unaware of day-to-day activity. As he got more and more removed from the business, he would make overtures that he would eventually retire and sell her the business. He was so dependent on her income generating that he took out a life insurance policy on her. I did not involve myself too much, but at a major industry dinner party I attended with her, he introduced my wife to the table as "my girl Friday," basically a secretary, which was weird. Over the years she tried to get an agreement in place to buy the firm, even if it was years away. He always delayed and made promises but never followed through. I told her, "This guy doesn't respect you or your contribution. He will never sell you the business because there is no reason to. He can make more money by stringing you along, and essentially, you are the business. Why would he sell it to you?" One day out of the blue, my wife received a raise and bonus, a very minor amount of money, and a contract that included a non-compete, non-disclosure agreement. After reading it, she realized that the owner was trying to lock her down from leaving for another firm. She had been getting feelers from other companies. To make things even more suspicious, she received a call from a competitor who said they were in final stages of due diligence and they wanted to meet her. The a-hole was selling the company and didn't think to tell her or ask if she was interested in buying it. She ignored the agreement and there were no other agreements in place. She was totally free. My wife is extremely loyal. She has missed so many special days working for this guy, stuck around when they were wobbly, even skipped paychecks when there were tough financial times. She was furious, the absolute maddest I've ever seen her. We discussed starting her own firm and I asked how much business is contractually obligated to stay there if you leave. It turned out that most agreements were either handshakes or 30-day at will. I also asked how many would leave with you. She said about 75%, including her biggest source of revenue, who didn't even know the owner. In a very short time, my wife took a 3-week vacation. She had months of unused time, during which time she rented an office in the same building, and made all the arrangement to set up a new shop. She agreed to leave any and all company property behind and do her best to give the old company no obvious ammo for litigation. She called her clients and said, "I'm leaving. If you want to look into relocating your account with my new company, you'll need to quit the old one before we can discuss it." Most understood the implication. While she was on vacation, she received a panicked call from her boss. "We lost XYZ company. Do you know anything about it?" She said, "I'm sorry, but I just sent you an email. I've resigned. All my keys and company stuff is on my desk." The new firm took basically 90% the business and seamlessly transitioned into the same company as it was before, but with a new owner. Even most of the office staff would come aboard. Within a year, her old company closed down except for the small office her old boss ran. She sees him once in a while and he just scowls at her. The next one is titled, "My Grandpa Was a Pro-Revenge Master." So my grandpa had a long-going feud with his older brother. For some context, his older brother kidnapped their mother from her nursing home, hid her in Florida, and had her change her will to only include him, to the exclusion of her 3 other children. First, my grandpa's brother took control of the house my grandparents lived in, that was his parents, and the business they had operated for 15 years, their business, on land owned by his parents. My grandpa offered to buy the property from his brother, but got the response, "I'll sell it to you over my dead body." Grandpa's brother showed up with a cooler and lawn chair to watch as they were forced to move out. So my grandpa got a friend of his, Jim, to buy the property. After the sale went through, Grandpa's brother handed Jim the keys, and Jim motioned to my grandpa, who was hiding around the corner, to come and get the keys. Grandpa's brother was furious. Many years later, my grandpa is driving around with his son-in-law, my dad, when he runs over a skunk. He comes up with a great plan, heads home, and ties a milk crate to his bumper. Grandpa puts the skunk in the crate, goes home and kisses his wife goodbye and tells her, "I'll be back in a few days." He made a 24-hour drive to Florida, dumped the skunk in his brother's convertible, and makes the drive home. When my grandpa died, he had a newspaper clipping in his wallet headlined, "Phony Bomb Defused." Apparently, someone, while on vacation in Florida, strapped some railroad flares to an alarm clock and tossed it under Grandpa's brother's trailer. The last one is titled, "Accused Me of Groping You? Have fun being turned into an outcast." This happened about from September and November. I, 14 male, went back to school as they reopened. Now this girl, who I will call Kay, had a huge crush on me in year 8 to 9. I'm from the UK, so the age was 12 to 14. She would constantly flirt with me and take pictures of me on my way home. Creepy, I know. I rejected her every time, which was like 5 to 10, no exaggeration. Kay would try and get in every class one was in, try to move to my math class, French, English, etc. I had her for 3 classes, geography, music and Welsh, and was sat next to me in all 3. It wasn't bad, as she would normally just talk to me, but she would try to touch my hair. I had blonde curly hair, move her chair closer to me and rest her head on my shoulder. I'll stop rambling and get onto the story. On my way home, Kay was walking with me as we walked the same way but would split eventually. I was talking to her and she said, "Give me your hand a second." I asked why. She said, "Just quickly." I let her grab my hand and she put my hand on her butt. I was shocked. I quickly pulled away as I had a girlfriend at the time that she didn't know about. She giggled and I just tried to look like it was a joke, but at where we would split she asked me out again. I told her no, as I had a girlfriend. She looked ducking upset and told me to go duck myself as she had been so nice to me. She said I owe her to be her boyfriend as she had done so many nice things for me. She once spent £20 on a game I wanted as she overheard me and friend talking about it for my birthday. I even got her something for £20 on her birthday. At this point I had enough and I walked home. She yelled back that I'll be sorry, but I didn't care anymore. About 2 months later, it's November and this happened in September. Kay hadn't spoken to me since. I was sick, so I got picked up from school and on the same day had to self-isolate for 14 days as someone in my house got COVID. After coming back, I was called to my head of year's office to talk about something. I went and she said that Kay had accused me of groping her. I told her that I didn't. But luckily she didn't punish me, as she said that this wasn't something I would do, and she told me she would move Kay from any of my classes. Thank God. At break, a bunch of Kay's friends come over and start asking me what I was doing by groping Kay. I told them that I didn't, at that I wasn't even in. They said that Kay told them the day it happened was before I was sick, so I was in and that I was ducked, whatever that means. After the girls left, my mates who were next to me whilst this happened asked me if this was true. I told them no, and that I don't know why Kay's doing this. They believed me, thank God, but I was still on edge. It got worse at home. I was bombarded with messages from girls and guys I didn't know that if I went near Kay again then I would be sorry, and calling me names. More people began to find out what I supposedly did at school, and girls were creeped out by me. I was annoyed, and when I was walking home Kay was in front of me and I asked her what the duck she was doing. She smirked and said, "You should have dated me when you had the chance." I told her that she needs to tell everyone the truth and that I did nothing, as it's ruining my life at school. Then she said she will tell everyone that she was lying if I break up with my girlfriend and come to my house for fun. I told her to go duck herself and walked past her and home. I couldn't stop thinking about it and was debating if I should just break up and date Kay, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I wrote a text saying that I wanted to break up, but I had my finger over the send button but couldn't bring myself to do it. Now the revenge, I think that almost texting her that awoke something in me and I was ducking upset. I started to think of how I could get myself out of this mess. That's when something hit me and I remembered something. The day she said I groped her, I remembered that my dad picked me up at the school gates for a dentist appointment, so I wasn't in. 4 of my friends could vouch for me as they knew I didn't walk home. The next day at school I told my head of year that I was being harassed by people at school and I social medias. She said she would talk to Kay and the girls harassing me. But that wasn't enough. I told her that the day she said I groped her that I didn't walk home and that my friends could vouch. She sat up in her chair and asked me to get my friends. They all said that I was telling the truth. Now my head of year just doesn't care, and she said, for duck's sake, Kay is a huge problem. We started laughing and she told us to go back to class. The next day was a Friday and I was called again to my head of year with Kay and her parents. In my head I was like, oh duck me, but I sat down. Immediately her dad started screaming about how I was a perverted bastard and I needed to be expelled. Turns out the day before, when I went to my head of year called the parents of all the girls, including Kay, who were harassing me. And her dad asked about it and she lied to her parents. I sat there whilst being yelled at and almost started laughing but composed myself. I told them that this was no way I could have groped her, as I was picked up by my dad on that day and people can vouch for me. He then started saying that I was lying or it happened on a different day. I said Monday we didn't have school, Tuesday I went to my friend's house, and on Wednesday I was picked up by my dad. At this point he was sputtering but then said it happened of Thursday or Friday then. I told him I went home on Thursday and then self-isolated on the Friday. He then started yelling more and my head of year is trying to calm him down, but he's saying that I'm lying about being picked up by my dad. At this point I was fed up and started listing all the times Kay had done things that made me uncomfortable, talking pics of my way home, touching me, and the time she grabbed my hand and put it on her butt. At this point Kay broke down and just screamed that she was lying and that she just wanted me to date her. I said thank ducking God, you see she was lying, and stormed out of the office and went to my class, which was next door. As soon as I sat down everyone started asking what was going on and I told them. Even the teacher was shocked. By the end of the day everyone knew Kay was lying and she didn't show up to school for the rest of the week. But on Monday Kay came back, but no one wanted to talk to her. So now I think she's trying to move school, but because of COVID she's struggling. I feel no remorse at all and glad no one likes her. Surprisingly even her dad apologized and said he was just protective. Fair enough, he gave me £100 and I thanked him. Kay hasn't gone near me since and her ex-friends even apologized. I was given isolation for a day as they said my language in the office was not acceptable, but I didn't care. Sorry for the long post, hope you enjoyed. Thanks for listening.